Dennis is voting.
Dennis. Yeah. Can you all hear me at home?
Yes.
Okay.
That's oh,
Do you want to rock it?
no, not yet.
So we're just loading the presentation, and we'll start in 1 second, or a few minutes, I should say. So please just bear with us.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we're at 6. Once Nicole come.
For voting members?
Nicole was a no, right?
She said she was coming.
Oh, all right.
So Carl, Dennis, Eric.
David's not on me.
Paul Sagarino, myself,
Yeah, I've got-
you.
Yep.
If I email it to you,
Yeah.
can you open it easily?
Yep.
'Cause I'm just, for some reason, WebEx is not opening my computer.
Okay.
It's really weird. Never had a problem before.
Yeah, I could pull it up, or Bob, whomever.
Do you want to pull it up?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, Bob.
Either one. Send it to me if you want. Not.
Okay.
It's on the SharePoint. Everybody can see it, right?
Oh, it's all right.
Can folks see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah,
Great.
Carl.
Very clearly.
All right, we don't have a quorum until Nicole comes on. But I think we could start.
Maybe what we can do is we can go down the agenda, hold the items,
Yeah.
which I think are only 2 to vote on, and
Okay.
then circle back if we have a
Yeah,
quorum.
sounds good.
Jim, you want? I guess the obvious question is that still need discussion, but then we
Yeah, we
possibly
can-
just can't vote on anything.
Yeah, and if Nicole comes, we can vote.
Okay.
All right, I will call to order. This is taking place. Public can access this video meeting via WebEx technology. The access code is 2344-484-8328, and the password is capital B Burlington. We only have 6 voting members right this second, so we're gonna hold the approval of the meeting minutes. I don't think I have any previous topics.
Yeah, we can come back to it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so go ahead, Kristen.
So we're just gonna talk about invoices and commitments for approval, and Mike Cox from our team is going to provide you with an update as far as the budget and currently where we are within the feasibility and schematic design budget to date.
Thank you, Christina. So yeah, on a monthly basis, we'll be sharing our budget. So this is what our budget will look like. As you can see from this, right now, the only committed cost is the contract for Doran Whittier for $396,000. If I draw your attention to the right side under the budget balance, you'll see we have about $1.1 million remaining. So just kind of looking forward with that, we've put together a little bit of a forecast on what we anticipate the costs are going to be. So, for example, we have a PDP and PSR estimates based on recent jobs. We're expecting to have, 2,000 and 5,000 roughly for those two. Our designer, as we bring them on board, we're anticipating about 600,000 for their basic services contract. And then environmental on site, which is all the consultants for traffic studies, surveying, you name it, another 300,000, which will leave us a balance of 185,000. So that's where we're projecting to be. So there's going to be that buffer. Just so everyone's aware, we are going to have to go through a budget reorganization effort, which the MSBA calls a budget revision request to align the budgets. Just putting money into the different buckets, it doesn't change the values in any way. 1.5 million is our number that we will hold to for the whole feasibility and schematic phase. But I just want to bring that up, that once the designer comes on board, we will be looking to issue a budget revision request, which this group will then vote on and approve. And all it does is realign the 4 breakout items, which we saw in this first page. So we'll just realign those budgets. We'll square them up with what the contract values are. And like I said, that last 185,000 will get moved down to other, which we can use for owner bought items. There's a couple of items we can use, but that is where we're looking right now. If there's any questions, please feel free.
I'm good.
Yep. So this will just be the point in the meeting that any budget related transfers that we need formalized, capturing what's happened over the past month in terms of invoices, where we stand with contracts, or anything that needs approval.
So the next item on our agenda was the SBC voting member review and approval. And so on the next page, you will see the current list of SBC members based off of the latest MSBA sheet that was sent over for their review and ultimately their blessing to us. And so we just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of the updated voting member list. This is as of today. Who are the voting members? I believe there's 12 voting members total. So we do need to make sure, as far as quorum goes, that means half plus 1. So that would be 7 members that we would need for a quorum for any formal vote from the SBC. I know the last time we had reviewed this, there was kind of a discussion in regards to the number of voting members, and wasn't sure if there was any additional comments and or thoughts that anyone wanted to share regarding that tonight.
Martha wanted to add one. Let's just, she's not here, nor do we have the votes to do it tonight, so let's just one more time. It's the next meeting.
Okay. And that's something that we can keep
Yeah.
on here for discussion. And ultimately, you know, if something does change, just please let us know. We can,
And if we add one, it doesn't change the quorum, right? It actually helps us.
depends
make
if
it an
they're,
odd number.
would they be a voting member?
Yeah, so if we add one of these people to become a voting member, then we'd have 13 voting members, right?
Yep,
So the quorum would still be
7,
7.
correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So we'll still table that, just for
Okay.
clarification.
No problem.
Is that true? So 6.5?
You can't have a half person.
No, I know, but it doesn't round to 7, it rounds, stays at 6.
I would double check with Amy.
I'll double check with Amy.
I would run 7 or 8.
Yeah,
Right, and plus, quote the policy minimum, like it usually says.
Yeah, no problem. So the next topic was the designer procurement update. So the RFS was sent over to the MSBA before November 9th. The ad was placed in the designer services section of the Central Register last Thursday, and the ad appears tomorrow in the Central Register, November 23rd. That includes also the local advertisement in your local newspaper and on Combis, which Nicole took care of last week before she went on vacation.
Yeah, great, thank
Yep.
you.
Our designer walkthrough is scheduled for December 5th at the school at 4 p.m. And the applications are due to the district. We'll be receiving them actually at our Dorn Whittier office on behalf of the district by 1 p.m. on December 21st. We have then to submit those applications to the MSBA by December 29th. And then our first DSP applications review is on January 17th. And then following 2 weeks later, which typically they always do interview whatever proposals have been received, typically around 3, just depends on the pool of the proposals that were received. And, you know, it kind of depends on what's in their pipeline. So no matter what, we are anticipating going to interviews on January 31st. And so that's the 2-step process with a DSP ultimately to then elect a designer for the project.
Nice job. So a lot of what we've been talking about the past couple of times are a lot of housekeeping issues. We're getting rolling, getting established, establishing workflows. As we put the schedule together, we talk about critical path, the activities that need to happen on time to make sure we get from point A to point B through the project. And the designer selection obviously is the next big task that we have in front of us. So this one is on the critical path, so to speak. So we don't foresee any of these changing. Of course, you know, weather circumstances might put some of the dates in jeopardy, but this is the bulk of, you know, what we're focused on right now in terms of getting the designer on board, communication with the MSBA. A lot of what will end up happening once we receive proposals is there's a couple of things we need to complete in terms of their consultant matrix, performing reference checks. So we'll do a lot of the heavy lifting as far as that's concerned, and working with the business office to make sure everything is okay. But once we get those proposals in, we'll keep you up to date on anything that the district needs. And we'll talk a little bit more about the 3 representatives to represent Burlington at the designer selection panel in the next month or so.
That's a good introduction into the next topic, which is the RFS update. And so we had originally planned to come to you tonight for approval for those 3 SBC members that must represent the town for the DSP recommendation. Since we don't have a quorum tonight, we can table that discussion until either the end of the meeting if Nicole does happen to join. If not, then we can plan on having another meeting this month or in December to then approve those 3 members. And so ultimately, the recommendation would be for Eric Conti, the superintendent, Paul Sagarino, the town administrator, and Melissa Massardo, a school committee member. And so our next topic is our SBC goals update. So a few of you did submit your information on the questionnaire. Thank you for submitting those. I appreciate it. And any of you that has not submitted it, I'm going to re-forward out the questionnaire again, the link to it, so that way we can make sure that we have everyone's input and update as far as goals, working groups, all the important kind of things that you want to share with us regarding the project itself, so that way we can get to know you better, but also share those important goals and working group information, reflecting everyone that wants to participate in them as well. So I'll make sure tomorrow morning to resend that questionnaire link to the full committee. Again, if you haven't filled it out, please do, so that way we can work towards some important goal statements for the project itself, as well as making sure any of you that that do want to participate in a working group have the opportunity to do that. And so this is a list of the information from any of the members that have submitted their participation for working groups on the questionnaire. You can see that there's kind of like the typical working groups outline that, you know, we typically have on every project. But most importantly, what we wanted to outline on here is the executive working group, which will be consistent of Eric Conti, Bob Kuna, Nicole Kasha, and Melissa Massardo. And so we'll lean towards working with them on important matters that are outside of the SBC that maybe we need to consult with you before an SBC meeting as far as getting your input on, or other items that we don't have maybe time within the month's timeframe between SBC meetings for things like review of some proposals for some of the early consultants or things like that. And so I did reach out to Teresa, who is Eric's assistant, for some times and availability for like a bi-weekly meeting. And as soon as I do get that back, we will want to schedule something in the next couple of weeks here with that group itself. And so ultimately, this is what we know today from the information that was received from the questionnaire. Again, this is obviously not everyone that does want to participate, but we want to make sure that anyone that is part of this group is providing their preference for working groups that they would like to be a part of. And then ultimately, just important factor, again, for working groups is to ensure that we have less than 7 people as part of the working group, so that way we don't have a quorum for each meeting. Ultimately, the work of the working group will then talk about those topics and then report out then to the full SBC at our SBC meetings.
The quorum you mentioned has to be, is a quorum of voting members, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And then just one final point on the working groups is it's really helpful to have a spokesperson represent each of those working groups. So when asked for updates at the building committee meetings, if those working groups had taken any business offline or just their discussion in between meetings, that they can speak up and provide an update to the entire group, whether it's a recommendation or just an update. It's extremely helpful.
Aiden, you want to talk about our project website?
Yep. So you guys all should have gotten a link a couple weeks ago with a private link to the current website in its current form. And I received some feedback based on that, made some edits to that, which is great. And I appreciate everybody who gave feedback to it. So now the website link is currently secure with the domain name that you guys chose last time. And now I think we're ready to go live with it. So next steps would be kind of sharing that with the community in terms of best practices in order to do that. Maybe putting it on the school website, putting it out on social media, however you guys feel is fit to best share that with the community. I don't know if you guys have any input in terms of which modes would be best, but I can get the website to go live tomorrow. We can share it with them however you guys best see fit.
What ended up being the actual domain name again? I can't remember.
Yep. So it's foxhillbuildingproject.com.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Any ideas as far as how you would like us to make the website itself? I mean, I do think it's kind of important to at least have it on the school's website and, front page kind of thing, even if it's at the bottom, so it's not a distraction for, maybe important topics that are regularly occurring. But any place that we can put it on the school website or any other mediums that you guys can think of, please let us know.
BCAT. So BCAT usually sends out mid-meeting recordings.
If you're gonna do Facebook, I suggest turning off commenting just to save yourself a headache. But
Well,
creating a
Cable
social
access.
media
Got it, thank you.
site, login for it?
Sorry.
Did you talk about having a social media, like a Facebook page, person for the
project?
project?
We have not talked about that. I think that that's why we kind of just developed the first step is the website,
Yeah.
where it's like a landing zone for all information regarding the project. And again, we're open to any type of feedback of the information that is landed on that project website.
So, do you typically have a email alias that people can subscribe to?
So there's a contact page on the website. So anytime someone has a question or wants to reach out to us, it goes directly to Dorn Whittier. And then we can forward over the request to obviously the district. So that way you guys can review it and let us know if there's a specific response that you'd like us to provide.
Yeah, that's the opposite direction I was thinking about. If you wanted to notify anybody who's interested,
Oh.
what do you do?
Well, so that's kind of what we're talking about. I think obviously on the front of the actual school website would be great. I don't know if there's any other.
That's passive. People would have to go look to find it.
No, you're saying, can you subscribe to the website or follow it and then have messages sent to you or any like news and update feeds?
That's,
There might be.
yeah,
I
there
don't
might
know that we're
be.
taking advantage of it on any of the other project
Right.
websites, but he would allow us to look into it and get back to you.
Yeah.
Well, can I just ask a quick question? So does the principal send out weekly, kind of updates
I just got a monthly one.
Yeah, about monthly.
Yeah.
monthly? So I think that's a great place to start. I mean, the people we're trying to reach are parents, right? So to the extent we can get that out there to potential voters, I think that would be a great thing. Is there a big presence on either Facebook or Instagram or anything else?
So we have Fox Hill PTO is probably the bigger presence. I would love to just back up for 2 seconds because I think I would love there to be a message that goes out with this website, right? Like, what are we just going to throw the website out into the ether? Are we going to say like, okay, here's the website? I think there's groups of folks, right? There's the Fox Hill families that are like, have specific questions. There's parents, people with no children that are like, how much is this going to cost me, right? Like, so you have the different groups. So I feel like if we own the communication and like, what are we doing? Why are we even sharing the website, right? So my initial thought was, I think there's a minutes tab, right?
Yep.
Yes.
I was gonna say maybe we hold off on releasing until we've at least approved the first minutes and say like, okay, if you want to follow this, we have a meeting because I mean it's a public meeting as well, which no one has ever come to. These are just kind of these are my thoughts, right? Like either we say, hey, this is the place you can follow the minutes. And with you guys, I think the minutes will come out faster than our regular school committee meeting. Or like, what do we want people to take away from this website? Though I would love to own that message a little bit more.
Yeah, I was focused on the medium, not the message. But
Yeah.
You're right. The message is very important.
Yeah.
And the timing. Why,
Yeah.
why now?
Yeah.
I mean, you can tell BCAT anything and they will
Right.
put it in their channel, but there are a lot, as you note, there's a lot of different constituencies that have interests.
This is an excellent topic for a communications working group to develop that strategy. We have to play and be a little careful about, what we do since we're essentially paid by the district about the messaging on the website. So it needs to remain mostly fact-based. The minutes from the meetings, project information, timeline. We're limited in that we can't really, I don't believe, advocate for or against anything necessarily. So the messaging,
That's perfect.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. Carl has his hand up, but I think all we need is like literally 3 sentences, like if BCAT is probably the first first medium I would think of, and then the PTOs, but like, are we saying, check out this, like, what's our headline? Follow the project here? That could be simple enough. Or, hey, we're building a new Fox Hill, because I even talk to people that are like, I hear we might be getting a new Fox Hill. Like, I don't even know if
That-
people understand that, Carl.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just kind of along what you were saying, Melissa, is I think that sending out the website is a good idea. I wonder, Bob or Eric, if it's appropriate to blast it to everyone, not just the Fox Hill community. And to extend that a little bit, I'm not sure how interested people would be, but maybe the communications subgroup or someone from Doran Whittier just put a brief blurb monthly. This is where we're at. We're about to we're advertising for a designer, or this website came up, just kind of just to keep everyone in the loop. That way no one can ever say, oh, we didn't know about it. Well, yeah, you did. You just didn't read the email or something like that. Just throwing that out there.
And that's something that we definitely can put together on a monthly basis as far as like a description of where we are in the process and timeline.
I think if we have one set of minutes and as of December
Whatever
15th,
date, yeah.
this is where we are, this is what's next. I think this graphic is a little helpful, but a little bit more context might be helpful.
Yeah.
Then I think we can BCAT can post that and we can be fairly straightforward. Like, this is the Fox Hill project. Here's where you can follow it. Here's the minutes. Here's how you can ask questions.
Yeah.
Is there somebody from the district that handles school-related business and or news to BCAT now? Is there one point of contact, communications manager, or is it?
Not yet.
We don't have
Nice.
communications
That would be
manager.
nice. Yeah.
We do not have one point of contact. I think there's relationships that BCAT has with different, either facilities or
Kristen's on, right?
departments. Yep. Yeah, Kristen's on.
Kristen owns most of the communication out of Fox Hill.
I'm here. I
Okay.
had my hand raised. Yeah, no, email is probably the best for families based on some PTO surveys we've taken in the past. Facebook, not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's on Instagram, but email's seemingly the most popular, and or a website, because we do have a PTO website too. So it is good that we have the building project website so people can refer to it. I would have to say, is there the only thing I didn't take a close look is translation. Is there a translation button on the building project website?
There is. We actually spent quite a bit of time talking about it because it needs to be maintained in parallel. It's work. It's a duplication of a certain amount of effort. So we removed it for the purpose of getting everything kind of the framework built and the pages built out. But there is on some level a translation.
Okay, because I try to put out for David every week. I mean, I didn't post last week, but I do post most weeks for him by an email blast. And also, if you go to the district website, Fox Hill News, there's usually a weekly update there that I post. Not everybody understands the subscribing part, I would have to say, to get the automatic email when a news post is made to the district website. So that's why I think emailing families directly, at least for the first initial communications, to get them used to, the name. I mean, they'll eventually get the lingo out, about the building website name, but initially there should be some good communication, and maybe for the first few, just directing them so that they really understand how useful this website will be.
Just briefly, I want to reinforce Carl's point about communicating for the whole district, not just Fox Hill.
Yeah, I think as much as a parent, I'd be very frustrated and upset if the town didn't communicate, or the district didn't communicate with me as a taxpayer about a project, even if it was a school that didn't affect my children. So I think that's an important piece.
So if we want to wait till our meeting where we approve some minutes in December, why don't we establish that communications working group meeting and have that sometime between now and when our first SBC is, so we can work through some of this information and then ultimately have them come to the full committee with that recommendation of how we want to proceed with getting the website out. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah.
If I could just comment, please. So currently we have our website, and we do have the ability to have anyone subscribe to it. So that is one capability. Through Aspen, we can distribute emails to parents and students if need be, and so we could do the whole entire district. We do have an all-call system, so we could physically make a phone call, which is not something that I'm promoting and saying that we should do that, right? I'm just saying the capabilities that we currently have.
It's a mixed-
Yeah.
it's a
Exactly.
mixed Feedback on that, because it comes up as an emergency on your phone.
Understood. And from a town perspective, then there's a town website, and then the town has the ability to do an all-call as well too to all residents. So again, I'm not saying we should do that. I just mean that, as far as like our outreach, that's what we have capable right
Does
now.
the senior center send out a newsletter or anything?
Yeah, they do theirs monthly.
Okay, we could get on that.
So other departments could send out, I mean,
Yeah.
DPW does outreach for trash updates, water flushing of hydrants, things like that.
There are 2 Facebook pages for Burlington.
Oh, there's like
residents.
5 of them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about Facebook. It's
Yeah.
anybody that's not on Facebook, I guess.
We don't have an official Facebook page of the school department that is currently being maintained,
Got it.
so.
Yeah, typically you see PTOs or other groups. that
Yeah,
do
we
that.
could post it under the Fox Hill PTO and then share that to all the numerous residents. There's a mom's page, this
Yeah.
residents,
Mhm.
there's.
Yeah.
And that'll give us some time to look at what's allowable or possible subscription wise on that website. I know it's pretty sophisticated, so I'd be surprised if it wasn't. It's just, I don't know that we're taking advantage of it right now anywhere, so we can look into that.
And we do have a digital sign that's mobile around town,
Oh, that's true.
so.
Oh, there you go.
Fox Hill Building Project, can we squeeze that on there?
Okay.
Well, I just went back to this slide based on this discussion, all good talking points. Is there any other names that we can think of as we look at the community outreach? We got 3 names on there. I think folks now have a little bit more of an understanding of sort of what the topics are going to be. Is there any other names that we want to consider at this point, or should we just roll with these 3?
I'd be interested in doing it as well. I missed that email. I saw the other ones. I didn't see this
Oh,
questionnaire.
We'll make sure definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
And like I said,
Perfect.
send out that link tomorrow morning so everyone can have the opportunity to participate in the questionnaire.
Yeah, it doesn't look like David filled out the questionnaire. So yeah,
Carl.
once everybody finishes that questionnaire, maybe you'll get some more.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I didn't receive one and would like to.
Okay.
I'll resend out, no problem, to everyone. Just make sure that everyone has, time in the next couple of weeks to fill it out. And that will give us time then to hopefully get something together for our next SBC meeting on working groups, goals, and then also on the approvals that we need.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? Everybody who's on the meeting, are you typically receiving messages and possible this one you didn't receive? Or are there other messages that you're not receiving?
I got a bunch from you, and I got the email with the web link, and I didn't see the other one.
So the way that is shared is through like a Google Forms. And that was how it was directly sent, was from my email from Google Forms.
Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll just create a link for it this time and just send out a formal email
Mhm.
from my Dorn Whittier account that just has the link embedded in there instead of just receiving a Google form.
Yeah, because we created a distribution list through the BPA's K-12 Gmail system. So I just want to double check. So I can even send out a test email tomorrow or tonight later on. And if
Well,
you
did
all,
everyone get the agenda?
Yes.
Ed, did you get the agenda?
I did get the agenda,
Okay.
4 or 5
Yeah,
days.
he's on there.
but
Okay.
and I've searched my email here. I didn't get the survey.
Works, but maybe something funky happened with
Yeah.
Google
Okay.
Forms.
I'll
Spam
copy a
could have
link.
grabbed it.
Yeah, I'll copy a link and I'll just send it directly from my email address to everyone. Okay, so our next topic is in regards to the early consultants update. The last time we had spoken to you about this, I think everyone felt strongly about us pursuing proposals for some of those early services that we could do on the site itself, geotech, environmental services, et cetera. And so we're currently working on gathering a list of all the consultants that we can reach out to, and then putting together the information that would be necessary for Nicole to send out that information to solicit for those proposals. And so our goal is to have that information ready to go by early next week, to then send out to get proposals in early December timeframe, maybe second week of December. And then we would like to work with the executive working group on whether or not we want to proceed with those consultants and their services. So again, that's just something we can keep on the SBC radar as far as what we're working on regarding getting some of those consultants on board to perform their studies prior to the designer getting on board.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any members that are joining tonight that weren't available last time, but this was typically what happens is the designer gets on board. Once we get an indication of possible sites, get that narrowed down. There's a scope of work outside the designer's base scope of services to perform a site survey, understand, what's in the ground in terms of ledge or geo-environmental potential issues, profiling the site. So we're just trying to get a jump on these as much as we can. Like I said, it's outside of the designer's base services, so they wouldn't come on board ready to do this without a little bit of upstart time. So we're just trying to get ahead of the game and take advantage of the time the next couple of months before they join us. So I think one of the questions in the survey we did here is that there was a good response in maintaining the Fox Hill site where it is. So whatever future solution happens, it'll more than likely be on that site. Of course, things are subject to change throughout the feasibility study, but all signs right now point to that would be a very good investment for the money wise that would happen anyway, and to do it a little bit early to get a jump start on it.
All right, the next topic is the educational program, and Steve's going to introduce Jason Boone.
Yeah, thanks. So Jason, I think I did see you on there at some point, but just to introduce the topic, the educational program is one of the first key deliverables in the feasibility study. There's the educational program, there's the space summary, and then the analysis of existing conditions. The educational program is a document that is first assembled by the district and educators and administration. It does talk a lot about policy, classroom size, educational delivery, the way grades are broken down, number of classrooms per grade. So there's, again, this is something that's changed within the past 10 years with MSBA that traditionally it was a deliverable that the designer would help once they came on board with, and they still do, but they do ask, and the MSBA has kind of shifted the responsibility on the district to do a lot of the heavy lifting early on. So Jason, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself. Jason is an educational programmer and space planner with Dorn Whittier on the architectural side of the business. So he does see quite a bit of these on the design side and getting on board, helping towns, districts, and cities help prepare that plan. So Jason, take it away.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that introduction. I think I met several of you during the interview process, but for those of you that I don't know, I did start my career in the classroom as a high school math teacher and then went on to get a second degree, master's degree in architecture. And in my role in Dorn Whittier on the architecture side, I serve as a bridge between the educator community and our design team, helping translate educational intent into design action. So Mike and Steve and the team asked me to be here to respond to any questions you might have about this educational program document and what it takes to develop that, perhaps some questions around timing, who should be involved. I think Steve said quite a lot about what the document is. It's meant to communicate educational intent, and there is a specific outline that the MSBA requests districts follow. And I think we shared not only that document, but a couple of examples from our Dorn Whittier projects that have been well received by the MSBA and its subcommittees in the process. So I saw that you have an educational program working group, but maybe I'll just invite any questions that anybody has about this particular document. Maybe it can be helpful.
Um,
Jason, this is a critical document, obviously. This is Eric.
This is, Yeah, this is one of two critical foundational documents for the process. Steve mentioned them both, this one and the space summary. This one is meant to communicate the district's educational intentions, sort of the arithmetic, the pedagogy, spatial relationships, safety and security procedures, teaching and learning practices in the classroom, curricula, and it's meant to be the document that the designer uses as a point of departure for their design efforts. It typically concludes with a listing of guiding principles for design coming from the educational lens. There are obviously lots of other lenses to be considered, but this one is focused particularly on the educational intent.
And also this will ultimately help determine how many classrooms there are in the building.
It will. In fact, Steve and Mike and Christina were talking to me about this just a few days ago. The district, I'm sorry, the MSBA has specific guidelines around class size. At the elementary level, those guidelines are 18 for pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, and 23 students per classroom for grades 1 through 5. And my understanding is that there's some desire by the district to maintain or at least target class sizes that are smaller than that, and perhaps design classrooms around that smaller class size number rather than the MSBA guidelines. Do we have that understanding correct?
Yeah, the only thing is you said some desire. I would say there's a high level of desire. So
Okay, perfect.
I would say almost an adamant desire that that they maintain the smaller class sizes.
And we have some experience with this. There's been lots of elementary schools projects out there with districts that have either guidelines or even policies around class size that are smaller than the MSBA guidelines. And how I think we would advise you is to write what your intent is, what your desires are, and then let the MSBA render an opinion about whether or not those additional classrooms would be eligible for reimbursement. It's pretty unlikely that the MSBA would say you cannot have the number of classrooms that you desire. They may say some of them are not eligible for reimbursement. I haven't come across that experience in my time with the MSBA yet. In fact, in Needham, we had a situation where we advocated for 4 additional classrooms in order to maintain the number of sections per grade as students matriculate through that building, and the MSBA allowed those all to be eligible. We've had other projects where the daily school schedule, which has an impact on utilization, resulted in a need for more classrooms than the MSBA would typically have come out of their guidelines. And again, the MSBA had fully reimbursed for those. So we would advise you to write it the way you want it to be, and then wait and see what the MSBA's disposition is about that request. Knowing that more often than not, at least in our experience, the MSBA has not deemed classrooms ineligible.
Jason, can you give me some sort of timeline with this? I understand where we are with the designer selection. Clearly, the program document has to be done. Does that have to be approved by the MSBA before the designer can use it?
No. In fact, I think the way we would advise you is that it would be best if the district makes a first draft at this before the designer comes on board. There are segments of this document that the designer will have heavy participation in. Things like safety and security, functional spatial relationships, because they're going to have an educational program consultant on their team. Perhaps you've heard of them. You know, David Stephen is a common one. Dr. Locker is another common one. Some designers have in-house educational facility planners like myself. And you'll want to be in a position to allow that process to run its course and let it also inform your educational program narrative. But the more you can get documented ahead of time, the better position you'll be in once the designer comes on board. I think I was sharing with our team that the time commitment of yourself and your committee is only going to increase over time. And anything you can take on between now and when the designer comes on board, it will likely be less stressful for you after the fact. So if we're looking at a time frame when the designer is expected to come on board in, let's say, early February, if you use the time between now and then to get the things you think you know, like class size, like teaching methodology and organization, staffing forecasts for the various enrollments that you have, that kind of data together and written about, anything you can do, I think would be helpful before the designer comes on board.
So again, Jason, I have a personal opinion here, but certainly would defer to the group, is I don't necessarily think groups write particularly well. So there should probably be a smaller group of the educators who take a first cut at this educational plan and then share it with the larger SBC for comments. Is that typically a process that you would say would work?
Yeah, what we've seen work best is that districts and school building committees start with this. It's called Appendix 3A. It's the outline that the MSBA uses for this document, to share that with the SBC and make decisions around which parts of the content different constituencies want to participate in. It would largely be driven by yourself and perhaps your director of special education. There are segments that are discipline specialists, art, music, science, health and physical education, that sort of thing. And then there are other things like safety and security, like technology, where members of the SBC may want to be more active. So I would start with that outline and sort of see what everybody's interested or capable of participating in. And then in terms of workflow, we've seen most districts use some sort of Google Docs, where they make assignments first, and the director of special education is responsible for the special education section. If you have a department head for fine and performing arts, perhaps they take the first pass at the art and music sections. And then someone, perhaps that's yourself, Dr. Conte, is the lead in reviewing all of that, but it's sort of a divide and conquer strategy, but it's relatively few people who are contributing to the document itself, depending on their specialty.
Yeah, I've read your samples. They look like something that we can do and get a jump start in before the end of the calendar year, and then sort of get that out. So I think, again, I like that idea of getting it to the people who are closest to the work, and they can start sharing.
Yeah,
sharing what they need.
and as you start to develop content, one way in which Dorn Whittier management partners can help is to alert you to particular areas of interest by members of what's called the Facility Assessment Subcommittee. I don't know if Christine and Mike and Steve have talked to you about that particular step in the process yet, but this is a small group of people that are a subset of the MSBA board, and there's a meeting with them after you've identified your preferred option, where they review in detail your educational program narrative and your space summary. And each one of those members has a special focus. There's a member of DESE on that committee, there's a former educator, science teacher on that committee, and then there's a designer on that committee. And so we can advise you on some of the common obstacles or things that districts often trip over in that meeting if they haven't written about their educational program in quite the right way. So we can advise you as you get content developed of what those obstacles might be.
Is Terry Kwan in those meetings?
She is one of the three, yes.
Yep.
So I can understand why you would trip. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can certainly do that, and I think I know some of the personalities who are there. So again, Jason, again, you'll be the primary contact from Dorn Whittier for that, and then we can get started. Again, I saw the exemplars that you had shared. It seems something that we can accomplish. Can we put a program into the new Fox Hill that doesn't currently exist there?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I think the most successful projects in my experience have been ones that don't try to just make a shiny new version of what already exists, but that use this as an opportunity to look forward and try to plan for flexibility, plan for as many unknown futures as you can. And so I would encourage you not to be bound by what you currently have. if that's what you're asking.
That is what I'm asking. So
Yeah. I don't know if you're considering moving special education programs from one elementary facility to this new project. But if that might be the case, that's one area where you want to be really thorough in your documentation about what's leaving somewhere else and what's coming to this project in order to get purpose-built space for them.
right, and we're a member of a collaborative. We have a collaborative program currently at Fox Hill, but we may want to add another collaborative program that exists at another school but needs more highly specialized space than exists. So again, we can talk about that or have those questions. We do not get a regional reimbursement for having collaboratives in our school. That was not the case 10 years ago. Is that still the case?
So the MSBA will ask if you are members of any collaboratives in this outline. I don't have any experience where the MSBA has chosen to make space for collaborative use ineligible for reimbursement, right? If it's serving kids, then it's likely to be reimbursed.
And one other question, I'm sorry to be dominating, but we have two scenarios here. We have a 3 elementary scenario and a 4 elementary school scenario. Are we writing 2 educational program plans for one for each of those scenarios? And I'm assuming, and again, would appreciate some correction, is the common area spaces associated with the 4 school scenario, so like the 360 whatever student school, is going to be a little bit different than if we do a 3 elementary school scenario. So again, 2 real questions. Do we need 2 educational plans, one for a 3 elementary school scenario, one for a 4 elementary school scenario? And then are the shared spaces, do we get to comment on the shared spaces because they may be of different scale for each of those scenarios?
Yeah, so let me try to answer those independently. The first question about do we need to write 2 educational programs or can we write one? I'm going to share my experience, and I think maybe Mike has a slightly different experience that's based on brand new information. On the architectural side, we have districts with multiple design enrollments, grade reconfigurations, all different manner of combinations that on the surface might require unique educational program documents for each one. We've never done that. What we've done instead is written about as many common elements for all of the options under consideration as possible, and then document any nuances for each different enrollment as they exist. So for example, in a 3 elementary school scenario, you might have one set of special education programs and space requirements, but for a 4 elementary school scenario, you might have a different set of special education requirements. But the number of art rooms or the class size policy or the teaching methodology, right, that may all be the same regardless of how many middles or how many elementary schools you end up with in your district. Mike, I think, has an experience where the MSBA recently differed on that opinion. Mike, you want to share anything about that?
Sure. Yeah, we're doing a project in Newton right now for another elementary school. And we recently had the MSBA kickoff meeting. And one thing that they pointed out was that they would like 2 separate educational programs for both scenarios. And that was new information to us. As Jason just said, we have a follow-up call with them on the Newton project, and we're looking to clarify that. But that is what we were told at the kickoff.
So again, I think there'd be significant overlap with the 2, whether we create 1 or 2.
Exactly.
I think that's not going to be a challenge. So again, one other very specific question, and again, I know I'm taking too much airtime here. The
common spaces.
Common spaces. So let's say for our programming, one of the challenges we have as a district is honestly athletic space during winter seasons. So it doesn't help us to build a new elementary school with a gymnasium, for instance, that can't handle a high school regulation basketball court, for lack of a better, I'm just using this one example. If we do the 4 elementary school scenario, does the MSBA's standard elementary gymnasium is not a high school sized gymnasium. So would that be a programmatic initiative that the town would say that we may need to pick up some additional cost for that?
So the MSBA guidelines specifically for gymnasia are very specific. If you can demonstrate that your daily school schedule and your use of that space as an instructional space would require more teaching stations than the MSBA guidelines suggest, they may allow that to be eligible for reimbursement. Lowell High School is sort of a way out there example of that. But because they had so many students and a daily school schedule that required it to be used for instruction during the school day, they were able to exceed the MSBA guidelines. I've not seen that at the elementary level. The standard MSBA gym, regardless of how many students you're serving, is 6,000 square feet. It is large enough to put a high school court in, but is difficult to impossible to have a high school court and bleacher seating at the same time. So what the district could do is they could deviate from that and make a bigger gymnasium or more than one gymnasium, but any overage would be at the town's expense and would be ineligible for reimbursement.
Okay.
The other core space is the cafeteria, the library, the kitchen, administrative suite, right? All of those sort of shared environments are all based on mathematical algorithms that relate to the population that you're serving. So the cafeteria and the kitchen get bigger as you serve more students, and rightfully so. But the gym is a unique one in that they have strict limits on what's eligible and what's not. In fact, in the gym case, they have a not to exceed size of 18,000 square feet, even if you want to pay for it on your own.
Okay, and then, all right, so, and I have very other specific design questions, but those are down the road, so we can talk about that. So we'll start working on the educational planning. Melissa, I guess with your permission, we would do that. There's an existing vote of the school committee to maintain 4 elementary schools. So we would also need to make the school committee aware that we need to prepare both a 4 scenario elementary school and a 3 scenario elementary school, even though they have a current vote to maintain 4. So Melissa, I'm saying I would probably just want to make you all aware of that.
Yes, at the end of the day, there was a vote a year ago before I was on the school committee. What is that stand, or do we vote again? How does it work?
Again,
Your agreement with MSBA is allowing you to study both. I don't know policy-wise at the school committee level what you need to make that happen, but as far as the agreement, the way the school building committee was formed and the agreement with the MSBA was for 2 separate enrollments. So I would leave the school committee and policy decision kind of in your hands to determine that.
Okay.
Again, Melissa, we're going to prepare both. I just want the school committee to know that I'm not being insubordinate by preparing a 3 school scenario.
No, that's totally fine. But my question becomes, we go down this road, this is just my point of order. When do we decide and who decides?
On which enrollment
Yeah.
gets selected?
Yeah.
So Jason, I know you handle this quite often on the architectural side, but with the multiple enrollments, once we start the design process, we'll carry options for both enrollments in the feasibility phase, early feasibility in the PDP. So as we start to generate options, once the designs are on board, there's addition, renovation, new construction, renovation only for both enrollments.
Okay, so 6 options on the table.
At a minimum.
Okay.
However, what the MSBA does, what they do say is that if you make a decision at that point of what the enrollment should be based on cost, based on school committee, on policy, or whatever other reason, you can make a decision to put one of those enrollments to the side. If you make a strong case in the educational program and the space planning, and it has the district's vote to go in that direction, that's okay. If by then there's not enough information to make a decision, those will get carried into preferred schematic report, which is where you're taking all those options and narrowing it down to one preferred option to carry into schematic design. So I think, again, Jason, I'll let you kind of chime in on the designer side, but there's a fair amount of work to carry those many options the further you go into the project. So it's, I won't say more advantageous, but I think to the earlier that we can arrive at that decision, however we tease that out, whatever information we need, I think is better for the project. But
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Steve. My experience on the architectural side has been slightly different in that in all of our multiple enrollment projects, the MSBA has, I think required is too strong a word, but has encouraged the district to maintain both design enrollments all the way to the conclusion of the PSR. It doesn't mean that you have to maintain every option that you have explored.
PSR.
PSR is the second major submission. That's the preferred schematic report submission. And maybe just to remind everybody, the first submission is the preliminary design program. And in broad terms, it's where you explore the many options and identify the few to move forward. The preferred schematic report submission is where you take those few, develop them a little further, and identify the one option that you're going to move forward into schematic design. So what we've seen, for example, is under consideration in the second step, the PSR step, might be a new construction for one enrollment and base repair, add reno, and new construction for the other enrollment. So it's not the full range of options for every enrollment, but there are some options for each enrollment that get carried forward. I don't know of any project that we've had on the architecture side that the MSBA has allowed the elimination of one enrollment at the conclusion of the PDP phase. That's not to say that it doesn't happen with other designers, but I've not had that experience.
yeah, and to be fair, that's a recent example that the MSBA shared on another project. So I don't believe that was, an exception to the rule. We can find out and get clarity on it, but just having gone through that recently, I think that they would just ask that the program and the submittals support that decision. And once the designer's on board, at the kickoff meeting, it'll be a topic of discussion.
So again, I'm just curious. I'd like to hear from other folks about the educational programming. I really talk too much. So were there any questions that people needed answered? I just would love to hear them now.
I have confidence in you, Eric.
Yeah, that's your big mistake right there.
I don't think so, Eric. I think the divide and conquer idea is really good. They named all the sections from that outline.
I just a general more question. I've heard us refer to the gymnasium like cafeteria space. Is this going to have like a separate auditorium space as well, or is it going to be merged like it currently is?
The space summary with the MSBA does not allow for a separate auditorium. So traditionally, it's a combination, whether it's a combination with the gym or a separate cafeteria auditorium to allow, a public or community space. Sometimes it's a gym cafetorium. Sometimes it's just a gymatorium. Yeah, you are bound to MSBA policy in that regard quite a bit.
Still have that pamphlet?
Yeah.
Yeah, we showed. You should see it. What
So
town
we
was that?
poured the Hildreth School in, I'm drawing a blank right now, but
Harvard.
There you go.
yes, I wanted to say Hudson, but Harvard.
Mhm.
And they have a gymatorium and then a separate caf.
Okay.
But it has a stage in it.
So,
Like
yeah,
similar to what we
on
have.
one side of
Yeah.
the gym, they have some pull-out bleachers on the long side. On the other side of that, there's a gym, a stage opening
Okay.
with like 3 risers. That either become the risers for the stage or additional seating for a sporting event.
We did that on our Manchester project. It's a gym cafetorium. So on one end of the whole structure is the stage that they use for auditorium or public meeting, etc. Then there's the gym itself, and it's built to allow for high school regulated basketball games as well in there. One side of the wall has bleachers that can be pulled in or out for games if necessary, and then there's an operable wall that separates between the gym auditorium from the cafeteria. So if need be, they can open up the operable wall to allow for overflow into the cafeteria as well. And that was for kind of the same reason that Eric was outlining, is they have no space within the district for all of the games that are ongoing on a regular basis. And so they do have quite frequently high school games that happen on weekends and at night.
I think they had town meeting there too.
They have town meeting
Yeah,
there.
so they needed a space
Wow.
to, yeah.
Yeah, and
host
that's
a larger
why
group.
the cafeteria ended up kind of coming together with an operable wall so that they could put as many people all through that entire space.
Never been in an elementary school with that set up and still the kids went there. So I grew up in a small town, but we had a separate auditorium
Yeah,
for us
At elementary level?
at the elementary level.
yeah, they don't
Yeah.
allow that anymore, obviously, with MSBA,
Yeah,
but it's a
expected
great
to see
way to
that
work
use.
around it, especially if it was an existing auditorium in an older school, and that
Okay.
was kind of the case there too. They already had an existing auditorium. And obviously, there's parts of that are ineligible based off of what Nathan was talking about, but it ended up working out really well. It's beautiful. I should show you guys some pictures of it.
I don't want to be the naysayer, but we didn't love the movable
You
wall
didn't?
structure in the current Fox Hill, so.
Oh, I was gonna say, I've never once seen a movable wall at Fox Hill move, but maybe
now
the
50 years old.
2022 versions are better, yeah.
Just say.
They are. Much better.
Than the 1969
Yeah.
version.
Much better.
We now have a quorum.
Okay, great.
We do.
Ta-da.
Finished with that topic.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, again, obviously Jason's here for anyone that has any questions. Feel free to reach out to him, but if you could include our team on there as well, that would be helpful for just knowing of the communication that's ongoing with the SBC.
oh, Kristen got her hand up.
Hi, sorry. Just going back to the space before we leave that. I didn't know if after school programming, because currently, well, Fox Hill is at capacity and very squished with our after school program. I didn't know if that was part of the space.
So
I don't know how to word that, but yes.
after school programming can be tricky. If it's dedicated space for after school activity, it will likely not be eligible for reimbursement. However, I think most designers have found ways to provide the functionality for after school programming by creating multi-use for spaces that are allowed. If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I just want to make sure, well, going forward, we kind of think about that too, because we always run into conflicts with, like we have, well, even in December coming up, we have our PE teachers set up a obstacle course. So that obstacle course is set up for 1 full week. It does not go up or down just because it takes too much time to set up and down. But that takes up the entire gym, and that's the space that our after school program uses, and it really binds them into the kids are only in the cafeteria for 4 hours, over about 100 kids in the caf space for 4 hours because there's no other alternative space for them. And in December, it's cold. I mean, if it's nice weather, they would go outside, but it really is problematic for space, if their own space, I guess, on occasion. And that we run into that with like PTO events as well as, sometimes we need to set up PTO events early and after school's very accommodating. We kind of shuffle the kids back and forth between spaces so PTO can set up for events. But I just want to make sure that that's taken into consideration if possible.
Yeah, I would invite you to encourage your designer when they come on board, not only to be aware of that, but to explore creative solutions for that. It is an example of the kind of space that Burlington and the local school district could pay for on their own if it was a dedicated space for something other than instruction. But I would suspect that there are design solutions where you pick something that can be multi-use. Maybe if you had a properly sized gymnasium for this project, that it could be divided in such a way that part of the gym is left available for after-school programming in the winter months, and part of it is occupied by this obstacle course. That kind of solution.
We had a big library.
So a question, where do those after-school uses get documented? Are they
So
part of the educational plan?
Yeah, they should be. In anything that's going to result in space should be documented in the educational program. And in the space summary, there's a specific location at the bottom of the form for what the MSBA calls other. Anything that's not instructional use or not strictly for educational use, they would ask the designer to document in that other category. And then, as we've been talking, the MSBA will render an opinion about whether that space is eligible for reimbursement or not.
Yeah, similar, any multi-use spaces that have educational delivery, a library, media center, a gymnasium that could double dip, so to speak, are extremely helpful. And then depending on how the programs run, sometimes the equipment and materials are separate from school. So if they need a little storage room, you're minimizing the non-reimbursable space. If it's lockable storage, that needs to be kept distinctly separate, or try to limit those for reimbursement purposes.
Yeah, Bob.
Jason, I just have a quick question for you. Let's say after the design phase, we can only get so creative with the number of classrooms and spaces that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Touch briefly on your experience with MSBA, allowing or not allowing additional classroom spaces that are non-eligible for reimbursement.
So like I said previously, I don't know of any examples where when the district has documented a need for additional classrooms based on a class size policy or a daily school schedule, where they've deemed those spaces ineligible for reimbursement. What they want to protect against is districts violating the agreed upon enrollment, right? They don't want districts that have an agreed upon of enrollment of 500 students building enough space to accommodate 1,000 students. So if it's a onesie twosie, one section per grade difference, the MSBA might allow that to be eligible. If it gets to be more than that, it's more likely to be problematic. Is that the question that you were asking?
Ultimately, yeah. So even if we were to agree upon a 4-section school, but we decided that we would love to have 4 additional classrooms, that potentially is problematic.
Well, it all comes down to the arithmetic. If you can say, all right, instead of 23 students per class, we want 20 students per class, and that generates 1 extra section per grade, right? And that's the school committee's, class size policy. The MSBA is probably pretty likely to support that financially. If the arithmetic says, all right, even at the smaller class size, you need 20 classrooms, and you're proposing 30, the MSBA is a lot less likely to support those extra classrooms financially.
No, I understand, but even if they don't support the extra classrooms, is there a limit to how many that we could build that are non-eligible above and beyond what's agreed upon?
I don't have a good answer to that. If you decided you wanted to build extra classroom spaces on your own, I don't have any precedent for the MSBA weighing in on that. I think that would be a situation where you would just simply document why you think you need them in your ed plan, submit that in the first major submission, the preliminary design program submission, and then wait for a response from the MSBA. It's part of the beauty of the MSBA's process is that there's time to change course before you have to pick, the one final option. So you would have time to digest their opinion about those extra classrooms after that first submission, and then either change tactic for the second submission or continue that idea forward into the next step.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's precedent of a project just being unsupported because of additional classrooms. I tend to lean that they would choose not to participate, but right, Jason, I mean, the MSBA is pretty particular about what they won't support on the level where they would just sandbag the entire project, whether it's a pool or a field house or 30,000 square foot gymnasium, right? There's clear cases that they'll say categorically, not only not eligible, but the deal is off, so to speak. And that would be a pretty big stretch if you wanted to voluntarily include more educational space to stop the project altogether. More than likely, it's just, we understand you don't really need them from an enrollment standpoint necessarily, but that you want them, have fun. You'll pay for it on your own, but the MSBA won't help you.
I'm assuming you all and the designer would guide us in what is too aggressive, if we get to that point.
I mean, we can't.
We would counsel you the best that we could, but that would be a little bit of uncharted territory, at least for me. Like I said, we have had examples where elementary schools have added one section per grade based on the smaller class size, but not something on the magnitude of doubling the number of classrooms or adding 10 additional classrooms to try to absorb another elementary school, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Well, I think that's, sorry, I think the side conversation we were just having is that potentially is the enrollment conversation of the 3-section versus the 4-section school, right? So.
Well, my understanding is that with your 2 design enrollments, one of them is based on a 3-section school and one of them is based on a 4-section school. Is that right?
Correct.
So maybe the clarification is, because the MSBA has agreed to both of those enrollments, the MSBA will fully support the classroom count associated with both of those enrollments.
Right, but one hinges on us not using one of our elementary schools that's currently in place.
Right.
So.
Rabbit hole.
Right. So we're asking the questions early to see what our options are.
Understood.
Okay. Eric, you got I think you know who you need for the educational plan. If you need us, let us know.
Do you want to go back and do the vote?
Yes, let's do that
Okay.
quick.
Melissa,
yes.
I'm all set. Yes, thank you.
Do we have a motion? The minutes, November 1st.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I have to do roll call, right?
Well, we need a second.
Oh, is there a second on the phone? We got everyone voting on the phone, I think.
Yes, second.
Okay. Bob,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes, sorry.
It's okay. Nicole.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So 7-0-0. Approved.
And then just the next item is the approval of the 3 DSP members. Just pulling it up on the screen. The motion's written out on the screen for you, Melissa, at the bottom.
Okay. Can I make the motion?
Oh,
you make it.
A motion for the selection of the designer selection panel. 3 SBC members must represent the town of Burlington for the DSP. The recommendation is Eric Conti, Superintendent, Paul Sagarino, Town Administrator, Melissa Massardo, School Committee Member. A motion to approve the 3 members above to represent the town of Burlington at the MSBA Designer Selection Panel.
Second, Mrs. Carl.
Carl, second. All right. Bob,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Dennis,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. 7-0-0.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any other topics anyone wanted to talk about tonight? And I don't think we have any public members for comment tonight. I don't see anyone in the meeting. I can't see
No,
that.
I didn't recognize.
Nobody online that's not either a member or Doran Whittier.
Okay. So our next meeting, since we just approved those minutes, I think we could still, well, do we want to schedule one for December now? So
Why don't we make a placeholder?
Okay,
If we don't have quorum
we-
and or material, we can cancel
Okay,
it until
all right.
January.
that is a school committee meeting,
on the
the
17th?
10th.
Oh, okay, the 10th, yes. Okay.
That's my only,
That's January, not.
correct, but that, we have a regular school committee meeting
Already scheduled
that
for that
night,
day.
yes, because
Okay.
I think Bob sent you the,
Yeah, so the thinking was is that we have our first CSP meeting on January 17th. And so following the timeframe of when we receive the actual proposals, which is on December 21st, allowing enough time for the members to take a look at it so that way we could have a conversation about the proposals received and the designers that are interested in the project. I think it would be probably beneficial for us to still have a meeting in December so that way we can talk about the website and maybe following the date that we do receive the proposals by like a week or so, so that way we can have a discussion prior to still that DSP meeting. So if there's a date that works between now and not obviously January 10th, but a way where we could go through the website with a community working group and then also then talk about the proposals received would be helpful.
okay. Our school committee meeting is December 6th.
December 6th.
Do
Okay.
you want to do the 13th? Is it too soon?
We should be able
Okay.
to, the 13th?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a meeting that we could have interim to just talk about the community website and like how we're gonna
Okay.
get that out there based off of a working group meeting before then.
Okay.
Is there another time between the 13th and January 10th that would work for another meeting prior to our first DSP meeting on the 17th? Or just, is there another date maybe in between that that would work for everything so we could just do the DSP proposal information first as well as the website? Like would, for instance, January 3rd work for a SBC meeting?
I'm guessing from the let's call it the 23rd, that Friday, through January 2nd, Monday. You may have some people unavailable.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the 3rd is fine instead of the 13th.
Yeah, I'm just saying since that's coming up so quickly for us to have
Yeah,
a working group
that's fine.
meeting and then to be able to report out the information based off of availability. Is it only Tuesdays that work for the
No, we
committee?
can, I mean, I don't.
You're open for
Yeah.
just seeing if people are available?
Yeah.
I mean, would it be possible to hold a meeting on like the Wednesday, the 11th or the Thursday, the 12th?
Yeah, the 11th is fine with me.
Yeah, works for me.
Then
So
that
we can-
allows enough
Thursdays are
time then
not
for
good for me,
the
yeah.
holiday for us getting together with the working group regarding communications, and then we'll have the proposals by then, so that way we can start kind of discussing it.
Okay.
I'm likely to have a conflict on Wednesdays due to Ways and Means in January, but I'm not material to this process.
Okay. Why don't we send out a meeting invite for January 11th for 6 p.m. And then if you could just confirm whether or not that works for you, that would be helpful. So that way we can make sure that as many people can attend as possible.
Okay.
Anyone want to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
That's an aye. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you very
Likewise,
much.
have a good holiday.
Thanks, everybody.
Got a picture of the
I was just gonna
manifesto.
show you guys, I pulled it up on Procore so that way you could see it. But this is the side that the